In this segment, we look at two important subgroups within Eastern Buddhism. First of all, Pure Land Buddhism, which is also called Shin Buddhism or Ahmadism. This seems to have developed out of a cult, out of a tradition of worshipping Amitabha, which existed in India maybe as early as the 2nd century Common Era, and then spread to China somewhere around the year 400, and then to Japan in the 6th century, and it's remained very popular in both China and in Japan. It's a type of Buddhism that's devotional. The focus of the devotion is the Buddha pictured here, in Sanskrit Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light, also called in various sutras Amitayus, in Japanese Amida, in Chinese Amitofo or Omito. If you search these names on YouTube, you'll find a bunch of hymns that worshippers have written praising this Buddha. The teachings of the school are based on the Pure Land Sutras. There are 3 of these. They're not very long. You can easily read them. Pure Land is another word for Sukhavati. Sukhavati is also called the Western Paradise. What this place is a Buddha land or a Buddha realm or a Buddha field. There's a teaching that each Buddha presides over its own realm, and this is the realm presided over by Amitabha. And if you have faith in Amitabha, if you love him, and if you say his simple mantras, when it comes time for you to die, he and maybe other glorious beings from the Pure Land will come and pick you up and bring you to the Pure Land, which is an unimaginably beautiful and wonderful place, and from which it is very easy to go on to full nirvana. It's a shortcut to nirvana, basically. And the school touts its simple means. In most versions, it's just a mantra. In Japanese, a lot of them focus on this one, Namu Amida Butsu, basically, Hail Amida Buddha. If you say this at the time of your death, or if you say it a certain number of times, then this guarantees this blessing. It's a means of salvation that even peasants, even the evil, can lay hold of. Merit making? Who needs it? You don't need to spend a lot of time doing religious things to try to build up good karma. All you need is the grace of Amida. Another and very different sub-school of Mahayana is in China called Chan. In Japan, it's called Zen. Zen tradition traces back to what historians would say is a semi-legendary Indian monk named Bodhi Dharma. His traditional years are 470 to 543 Common Era. Bodhi Dharma traveled from India to China. And according to tradition, he tells the Chinese emperor that no merit is accumulated from good works. Reading scriptures is useless and worthless. Only inward meditation is the path to enlightenment. Chan is a meditation-focused school. It's interesting that so many people in the West basically identify Buddhism with meditation. They think that's just all it is. That's all it's ever been. Actually, meditation hasn't really been a central practice for most kinds of Buddhism. There have been different kinds of meditation that are a part of just about any kind of Buddhism, but as far as it being the central practice, well, that's just Chan and Zen. And notice that they poo-poo the practices that are so valued in other schools. So against the Theravadins, you don't need to make merit. Reading scriptures, that's a hit against other Mahayanists. No, what you need to do is meditate. The point of meditation is to be able to discover your true self, be able to perceive that. You need to find what they call your Buddha nature. And this thing is, in their mind, the absolute reality, maybe in some sense, the only reality, the rest being illusion. Now, this ought to sound familiar to you. This sounds very similar to Advaita Vedanta Hinduism. The absolute reality kind of sounds like Brahman. This talk about discovering your true self sounds a lot like Hindus talking about learning that Atman is Brahman. And that's right, they are similar, and it's probably not an accident. Some scholars see a Buddhist influence, specifically a Mahayana Buddhist influence, on the development of Advaita Vedanta, and they believe there's mutual influence. Also, they think that Advaita may have to some extent stolen the thunder away from the Mahayanists by preaching something more Indian, by preaching a Hindu version of this. It would take away any need for people to believe in this type of religion. So the ultimate point of meditation is to discover your true self. The means to that is to still the mind. They consider thinking to be a barrier to enlightenment. Mind, in their view, is part of the problem. Words and concepts are part of the problem. This awareness of the Buddha nature, they think, is something that's beyond words and concepts. There's a very potent sort of anti-intellectualism that's a key to this movement. It's at its core. It's not understanding that you need. It's not intellectual labor that's required. It's labor, all right, to meditate for long periods, but it's not like being a college student or a scientist. In the 9th century, that is, in the 800s, the Chan school had a disagreement among themselves about whether enlightenment is all at once or whether it's gradual. These two schools came to Japan around 1200, and there the two schools are called Rinzai and Soto. Rinzai believing that enlightenment is a sudden kind of all-at-once thing, and Soto believing that it's gradual. Some terms from Japanese Zen are useful to know. Satori means enlightenment. It's having this non-conceptual awareness of your true nature. Zazen is sitting meditation. This is meditation how you probably imagine it. It's, of course, not the only kind of meditation. We already talked about recollection of the Buddha meditation. There's also deity meditation, which we'll talk about shortly. And they also meditate when they're walking, standing, and so on. This is one type of meditation. It's not an easy kind. You can't sit still for more than, say, an hour at a time. You've got to get up and move around. It takes real training to do very much of that. Try sitting still sometime for just 10 minutes. You'll see how difficult it is. Another term is koan. This is basically a nonsensical, unsolvable riddle. It's something that a student is assigned by his teacher to meditate on, and the purpose is to kind of stop the gears of the mind. Because it can't be solved, the piece of nonsense, this is supposed to help you slow down, as it were. You've probably heard the one, what is the sound of one hand clapping? That's just one of many. In our next segment, we'll have a quick look at Northern Buddhism.